The brand new Peugeot E-5008 has already been showcased to you in a classic review with a detailed driving report highlighting both the strengths and weaknesses of this electric car. If you haven't seen the video, I'll make sure to link it again in the description as it's crucial for today's video where we'll take the Peugeot E-5008 on a consumption drive along with a charging check. In these current winter conditions of around -5 degrees, we will proceed to test the highway consumption at 100, 120, 140 and 160 kilometers per hour. We'll also perform the charge check with you, running from 10 up to 80%, to see if you can take a long trip with the Peugeot E-5008 comfortably in winter. And of course, we want to try out the assistance systems and much more. I would suggest you better check to see if you have the ticket for this service inspection. That's your subscription with Einfach Elektrisch. We would appreciate your support with your subscription. It's free of charge for you, but a significant help for us also to grow a little together with you. I'd say let's not waste any time with the brand new Peugeot E-5008 and the consumption drive, including the charging chic. We kicked off our journey with the Peugeot E-5008 and would like to have a conversation with you about the starting point. We have the basic model priced at €51,150 with a 73 kilowatt-hour net battery, 157 kilowatts, 213 horsepower, 345 newton meters of torque, a 170 kilometers per hour top speed, and it goes from 0 to 100 in about 10 seconds. You likely saw all that information in the initial video, which included the review and the driving report. We're heading toward the A20. North at 120, 140, 160 kilometers per hour. Drive maintaining an average speed, want to perform the charging check, and currently experiencing 3 degrees Celsius, which means it's wintry weather. Winter tires are installed. Stefan, what size are they?
We've got 19-inch wheels fitted with two 35 by 55 tires.
Exactly. Here we have it in the GT line with full specs. We also want to test the assistance systems, route and charging planning, and all that with the Peugeot E-5008. Then it has to offer. Soon we'll drive through New Brandenburg. There we want to determine the inner city consumption over roughly a 7-kilometer distance. And then on the way from New Brandenburg to the highway, we have another 7 kilometers where we want to collaboratively determine the highway consumption, allowing you, by the conclusion of this video, I strongly believe, alongside the comprehensive review, to gather all the essential and critical information you need about this exciting new electric vehicle. In the review, I gave you an incorrect almost 14-day value. In total, we drove 1,198 kilometers with an average speed of 57 kilometers per hour and an average consumption now in winter weather of 26.3 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. It's worth mentioning that in winter, consumption in Nectar cars is about 20 to 30%. Higher than in summer. That's something important you need to know. For all those who might not have much experience with electric cars or might encounter some issues, I believe it's noticeably more economical during the summer season. I believe the Peugeot E-5008 always comes standard with a heat pump on board. However, if no heat whatsoever can be extracted from the air anymore, then it's most likely that we have a standard type of heating coil in place that will heat up quite effectively.
Certainly.
We've now arrived in Neubrandenburg. I'm attempting to reset the trip 1 counter. Unfortunately, it's not working here because for some reason, the windshield wiper just turned on unexpectedly. Or did he delete it? Yes, he deleted it. Very good. That means we will now see over the next approximately 7 kilometers what we consume here during the passage through Neubrandenburg with the E-5008. We have now reached the outskirts of Neubrandenburg and are taking an attentive look at the consumption. The distance is 7 kilometers as anticipated. Average speed is 55 kilometers per hour. So you can observe that we maintained a consistent pace here and achieved a consumption of 13 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. Of course, with the short distance, it tends to fluctuate slightly, but that's almost 600 kilometers of wintry 2-degree urban range. That's pretty good, right?
Not wrong indeed, yes.
Look, Stefan, I'm resetting the onboard computer. Now the wiper is turning on again. That's kind of brilliantly done. Yeah, now let's take a look and see how the consumption trends over the upcoming 7 kilometers as we approach the highway. Let's take a closer look at the consumption figures. We are now getting very close to reaching Highway A20. And we have covered a good 6 kilometers, now totaling 7 kilometers in our journey so far. Average speed 68 miles per hour, and the average consumption here with approximately 16.5 to 17 kilowatt hours. In my opinion, that's actually quite respectable even at 3 degrees outside in winter conditions. Or, that's fine, yes, that means we'll continue on the A20 motorway. Set the cruise control to 100 kilometers per hour and then start with the first motorway consumption value with you. But then, of course, averaging 100 kilometers per hour over 20 kilometers. We're going to start with the first consumption value. I'll reset the onboard computer with you now. This means we'll drive the next 20 kilometers at an average of 100 kilometers per hour, according to the onboard computer's speedometer, Peugeot E-5008. We'd like to have a conversation with you about the assistance systems available here in the Peugeot E-5008. We have it basically in the standard version with 157 kilowatts, 73 kilowatt hours battery in the GT line, and of course we also have the driving assistance package on board, which includes a lane keeping assist with a steering assist and a partial battery. Lane change assistance. I don't fully understand what that means either. Now I'm supposed to stay alert. And now I'm feeling uncertain. Oh, do I have to press OK? Yes, OK. Well, unfortunately that didn't work just now. Let's test again. Okay. Okay. And this is probably the semi-active part now because I would have to press OK, right?
Yes, exactly. That's not automatic.
Okay, so let's do it in the opposite direction now. Press OK. And then it will make the semi-automatic grinding sound. The lane change, yes, otherwise you've already seen that the car, even on the country road in the review, holds the center of the lane very, very well, and it does the same here on the highway. And that's not a given, as there are still some cars that tend to weave a bit between the lanes and already face their first issues with even a slight curve, then start triggering alarms and say, hey, I can't continue driving autonomously, please take over immediately. And I think that's exactly what the Peugeot is doing, and very, very decently well. However, what I'm somehow missing is the adaptive cruise control feature. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to detect that particular feature yet. This essentially means that if there is a change in speed, it doesn't automatically adjust itself to adapt to the new speed setting. We basically have to handle that manually. And just like that, it doesn't have the predictive capability to foresee like, hey, an entrance to a town is coming up or there's a speed limit ahead, like we have here on the A20 for a certain stretch, and then it adjusts its speed essentially by coasting along, because we've come to understand that coasting along in this manner can actually be significantly more efficient when the recuperation adapts to the speed. And I would really wish for Peugeot to catch up there, for example, with the VW Group, BMW and Audi, who are currently ahead in the predictive field. I believe they are currently the front runners in the semi-autonomous sector, since it's always the important next step moving towards full driving autonomy. And in the end, it's also about, and this is addressed once more to the fans of American supercar manufacturing, we test here in Germany. So we're driving here on a German autobahn, and all that stuff that might work with full self-driving in America doesn't relate to the reality here with us. Some people mistakenly believe a Tesla drives itself, but it really doesn't. Just like other cars, they don't drive themselves. Ford's Blue Cruise allows for hands-free driving while you stay attentive, operating at a 2.5 level of semi-autonomy. This tech is in the BMW i5 and i7 too. It's remarkable that you can start a lane change just by looking into the mirror, greatly enhancing the driving experience. Currently, Ford and BMW are genuinely standing out as the top pioneers in Europe.
Yes, correct.
We have the first consumption value. We've driven 21 kilometers constantly at 100 kilometers per hour. The average speed showing as 100 on the speedometer equates to 94 on the computer, reporting a consumption of 19.3 kilowatt hours per every 100 kilometers driven. Given the size of the vehicle, it's actually quite surprisingly positive here at 2 degrees Celsius, don't you agree?
That's really okay, yes.
Let's take this opportunity to go ahead and make an adjustment by setting the speed to 120 kilometers per hour within the distance control system, shall we? You see, I'm resetting the onboard computer with you. Let's observe how the fuel consumption changes now with an increase of 20 kilometers per hour over a span of 20 kilometers. A solid electric car naturally includes comprehensive route planning, ideally combined with convenient charge planning that's controlled by voice commands, because voice technology seems to be seen as the future by many manufacturers.
Right? Yeah.
Let's give it a try with you by saying, "Hey Peugeot." Hey there Peugeot. Hey Peugeot. Can you navigate us all the way to Munich, Viktualienmarkt 1?
I discovered these ones right here.
That's definitely quite a significant step forward. From the review, because back then it wasn't able to find any addresses in Munich whatsoever. Let's just approach this with a positive mindset for Peugeot. Here's the Honey House, for instance.
Honeyhäusl located at the Munich Viktualienmarkt, vehicle stationed at Viktualienmarkt 1-2 in Munich.
Start guidance process. Yeah, do you have to press something here? Probably there, right?
Certainly, I'll start the navigation process now.
Yes, very nice. So that means he's essentially doing the route planning here. Here you see this again at the Viktualienmarkt.
The current time is 10:27 p.m. right now.
Yeah, that really would be an absolute dream come true if it went that fast. Now he's also busy managing the loading plan. That's honestly quite all right. But now we're kind of missing an overview here. What do we need to do? We're back here as inexperienced elementary school kids. That means we need to zoom out now. Then we can see more clearly where it's guiding us along the route as we make our way all the way down the A20, and it somehow feels like about five charging stops. You know what I mean? 1, 2,
3, 4, 5, think one's hidden.
Yes, it's really well prepared. So that's indeed a fabulous story. Oh, look, here's the full overview available. I'm telling you, it's mostly user errors, Stefan. You never believe that. That's not even the car. It's actually us. So he's got Eon included here, a Lego is also listed here, Ionity's here, Teak's listed, Total Energy's also here, again EMBW. What? Now counting 1, 2, 3, 4? Could it be 5 to 6 charging stops?
Yes, that's absolutely correct.
1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 charging stops.
That's actually quite a lot.
Munich? In some ways it totally fits, but on the other hand, not really if we're being completely honest about it. Maybe also about the specified WLTP consumption, right?
Well, nope, not really, honestly.
I mean, sure, in winter, likely not. You got to admit that doesn't work with any electric car. But, that was also the essential crux of the entire issue that I mentioned in the review. When the battery is 100% charged, it somehow shows 502 kilometers. If you scale that up to 73 kilowatt hours net, we're talking about a consumption of under 13 kilowatt hours. How fast should I drive? Eco drive at 90 kilometers per hour behind a truck?
Not with folded mirrors, right?
We have the second consumption value. We drove 21 kilometers. An average speed on the odometer of 120 kilometers per hour. The onboard computer shows 114 kilometers per hour, and we have a consumption of 26.3 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers driven. We're accelerating to 140 kilometers per hour. As usual, I'll reset the onboard computer with you because we want to find out over the next 20 kilometers how much the Peugeot E-5008 consumes. At 140 km na sat. Yes, exponential growth, we know that dot. With 7 kilowatt hours, that's quite a lot. Let's see where we end up today, exactly because after 140 comes 160. A good travel electric car truly includes having a decent sound system. In our test subject, unfortunately, we weren't able to find a sound system from any well-known and reputable brand.
That is likely the standard, though you usually don't do that much with it anyway, right?
Yeah, it's fine now. I think it's not really for audio fans, just being honest. But maybe in that price range, without shelling out any extra fees, you probably won't find it with other manufacturers either, don't you think? You gotta be fair, right?
Absolutely.
Well, I think it's something you can definitely listen to. It might not be as crystal clear in the high frequencies as what you might be accustomed to from more advanced or higher-end sound systems. However, the bass thunders quite a bit, yet it still works. It's all right. We've managed to learn the next consumption figure after all. We maintained a steady speed of 140 on the speedometer. According to the car's computer, that's 133 over 20 kilometers and resulted in a consumption of 33 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers driven. Yes, we're about to make a U-turn here on the highway and then drive in the opposite direction at 160 with you. KMH determined yes is of course a decent value, but we must not forget one or two things here. We have 2.2 tons of curb weight, we have a really massive SUV here, even if it might only be 4 meters 80 long and not over 5 meters, but still it has a substantial frontal area that stands in the wind, and I would say that the 4 degrees more now don't exactly make a huge difference. And I could imagine that it might potentially be 20–30% lower during the summer months. And then in that situation, it becomes truly interesting yet again. Perhaps also in connection then as a long range with the larger battery. Could it maybe even become an interesting travel SUV, right? What do you think?
I believe a few things might happen this summer, yes.
Write in the comments if you think, wow, that's ambitious. Or do you say indeed you also have to take into account the vehicle size and weight? Honestly, considering that makes it not so bad at all in the grand scheme of things. I'm quite curious to see how all of you view it. We've made the new turn, and now we're resetting the onboard computer together with all of you. We intend to measure the fuel consumption of the Peugeot 5008 at an average speed of 160 kilometers per hour over a distance of 20 kilometers. Stefan, do you have any guesses? Will we stay under 4 or
About the 4-person vehicle trend of the series, we once had around 7 more. I think that we're just over now.
Of course, a high-quality electric car specifically designed for long-distance travel must also have a suspension system that's suitable for long distances in order to identify all the vehicles that we have thoroughly tested over the course of the last 5 years. We've developed a truly neutral medium that offers us a clear and concise sense of direction to follow, to differentiate between the individual landing gear systems. By the way, this medium is known as, or you probably already are familiar with it, Stefan's popometer. And today, we definitely want to see how Stefan's popometer reacts to the Peugeot E-5008.
Well, I have to say, I find the seats here incredibly comfy. It's really nice, almost like sitting in a fancy chair. I'm able to pull the seat out even more if I happen to have somewhat longer thighs than average. I've got nice side support, I've got good shoulder support up here. You can also adjust the headrest quite nicely. The thigh support is really fantastic, very comfortable. And from what I've experienced so far on our journeys with this vehicle in terms of the suspension, I find it quite enjoyable. It's nice and comfortable without any significant swaying movements. It handles potholes, effortlessly absorbs bumps, and manages uneven surfaces quite well. Everything feels very relaxed, so I really think that regarding suspension and overall ride quality, it's truly excellent.
Yes, French cars in general are synonymous with genuinely pure driving comfort. For some individuals, though, it might feel a bit too soft and excessively comfortable. I actually prefer it, as I'm not a fan of rides that end up so harshly impacting your back with every jolt and bump in the road. Honestly, an SUV naturally encourages you to just cruise leisurely instead of rushing through traffic at high speeds. And with 157 kilowatts, 213 horsepower, it's definitely not a race car, but rather more of a pleasant cruiser that you take on trips. In my considered opinion, Peugeot truly accomplishes a remarkable job with this robust steel suspension system. What is equally impressive is that the lane change assistant here is functioning remarkably well. Currently, I need to briefly slow down a little bit as I've let someone pass by. I'm trying to be fair and honest during such drives. It gets a lane change assistant up to 160 kilometers per hour in the cruise control. In eco mode, it works at 160 kilometers per hour, and you can really see that Peugeot is an experienced car manufacturer. For them, it's truly all about the driver and the driving experience rather than any unnecessary bells and whistles. So, right blinker, OK pressed, hands on the wheel, and it performs this semi-automatic lane change even at 160 kilometers per hour. Smooth and quick. Unlike, for example, back when I was driving my Mercedes EQS, where it felt like you were taking your time to light a candle on the side.
Which always seemed way too slow to us, as doing it by hand is usually quicker.
So if Peugeot, by the way, with capacitive steering control that can easily detect the attention of just 3 fingers, could now manage to this predictive control, even Ollie would be totally happy.
Sure thing.
He'd definitely be a real fan of a Peugeot, wouldn't he? Yes. So, dear friends of French craftsmanship, maybe consider carefully what you really need. I know you at Stellantis and Peugeot have really got this down. Incorporate it into the vehicles so we can drive even cooler, semi-autonomously supported. We also determined the most recent consumption value with your help. Naturally, we had to ease off the gas pedal for a moment because I needed to let someone overtake. And now we've driven 21 kilometers almost continuously at 160 kilometers per hour on the speedometer. The onboard computer shows 153 kilometers per hour, and the consumption remained under 40, specifically at 36.6 kilowatt hours, which I consider to be quite reasonable and comfortable for a vehicle of this size and weight, especially when considering the outside temperature of 3 degrees. Yes, I would say you should compare the Peugeot E-5008 with the other tested vehicles in the tables, and then we'll see each other again at the top speed segment. You want to drive in a sporty manner as well, and we've got 157 kilowatts under the hood at our disposal, so I'm executing my kickdown. I'm in sport mode, accelerating rapidly through 120, 130, 140, and onto 150, then pushing past 160 and finally hitting 180, 170, and that's actually our top speed for this vehicle. We're just managing to reach around 173 kilometers per hour, which is quite impressive to achieve with this car model, and that's the part where I'm a bit disappointed. Peugeot 175 kilometers per hour. Why? I'd like to justify it. It's also my subjective personal opinion. E-mobility should be fun for people, and the American supercar manufacturer has, I believe, shown it at its best that it doesn't really cost more to pack more power into such a car, so that you have it available when you want it. I wanted it now, but I didn't get it because you're 157 kilowatts, so to speak, incorporated here, and I'm quite convinced that the car would really benefit from something like 200 to 220 kilowatts of power. Wouldn't you agree, Stefan?
Yeah, well, I'm always a fan of aiming for 200. That should be doable.
So, and also like that in the pull-through, it's all with the 345 Newton meters. I don't want to say it's sluggish, that would be unfair, but it's just somewhat sluggish. Honestly, I think sluggish is quite a fitting word for describing it. And there are many of you out there, and I know quite a few family dads who say, hey, of course I drive a nice family car, leisurely cruising around comfortably with my wife and kids. And then we'll take a nice vacation with the Peugeot E-5008. But when the wife's not with us and the kids are just like,
How about trying to press a little bit harder on the brush?
want to finally fly a bit, want to show that you're driving a Peugeot E-5008, which seems to outpace half the cars on the highway and doesn't let it pass you by, or perhaps I'm still just too young or inexperienced for driving like that? I'm genuinely not sure. What are your thoughts on that? Feel free to share your opinions if you think you need more power, considering the 100 mark is already behind us. I checked again, and with 27 battery left, we reached speeds of 120, 130, 140, even 150. Then back to 116. You should try an egg white roast, right? At 170, 175. Maybe I'm a bit unsure, but 175 kilometers per hour speed is still quite livable for me. I guess you don't really symbolically drive at 200 with such a large wardrobe, do you?
Number.
Or if so, just temporary and then it's irrelevant. Because then everyone knows the consumption is exponentially high. But like this, when it comes to the punch, the acceleration, driving a big SUV, you pull up at the ice cream parlor or, I don't know, the KDW, or cruising up and down Kudamm, wherever you live, or Maximilianstrasse, or it could be the Neue Wall, and then you've got this huge beast of a car, where everyone thinks, hey, look, Stefan or Ollie really invested in a Peugeot E-5008. And then somehow every Golf one wipes the floor with you or whatever.
Well, those are certainly things that you really have to think about carefully.
There's also an AWD option, which includes a small battery. Then you achieve 240 kilowatts, 320 horsepower, and less than 8 seconds to reach 100. That's absolutely a very positive step in the right direction.
Yes, okay.
But that's not really what we are able to achieve in electromobility. Let's use its full potential. Give it 500 instead of 345 Newton meters, and it'll have a whole different punch. I think this electric motor could actually handle it with the battery voltage and everything, right? It's always really just a matter of what the manufacturers desire and what they actually permit. And there, I would just wish, Peugeot, that you could perhaps do a bit more for your customers and maybe for me. We've successfully made it to the Ionity fast charger located here at the Demenerland service station, and now we're planning to charge the battery from 10 all the way up to 80% together with you. We'll also arrive with 10% battery charge. Of course, we've input a charging station even though the car isn't supposed to have preconditioning. We would consistently do it this way to give the car the opportunity to precondition itself properly. Then he basically added another one to the already input charging station. That's actually quite annoying, isn't it? They added a second charging station, but isn't that sort of just a bit redundant and pointless, or what are your thoughts? If I input Ionity, I am supposed to initially charge up from 10 to 29% in Voltschuh,
Right over there by the Eon, precisely.
to then smoothly drive from this Eon over to the Ionity station, alright? So what's the reason for that?
Yeah, it immediately jumped straight from 10% to 11% after plugging in the cable. It is gradually starting to build up the charging peak now. It's already reaching approximately 75 kilowatts, maybe 76 kilowatts. Hopefully we can manage to achieve the best possible value today too.
Yes, the best value is about 160 kilowatts. It should be able to charge from 20 to 80% in around a good half hour. We typically measure 10 at 80, so I would estimate more around the mid-30 minutes mark. Hopefully we can achieve that together. I've read in numerous forums that during the winter, it only somehow manages to achieve about 80 to 90 kilowatts because of the battery thermal management system. What's it called again? Battery heating, so to speak, or cooling is apparently absent. As we have personally experienced with Stellantis and some other vehicle derivatives like the Opel Zafira e-Life, this was the case as well. I believe it was called that. So everything is somehow suboptimal, and I find it doesn't quite fit into the present of 2025 because we will soon be getting the Smart #5, a car that can charge a 100 kilowatt-hour battery from 10 to 80% in 15 minutes. And definitely some competitors, although they offer less overall space, do indeed achieve noticeably quicker charging performance levels. And naturally, Peugeot and Stellantis find themselves in considerable competition with several other car manufacturers out there. Incidentally, we consistently enjoy using InCharge's free miles when it's time to charge our electric cars. InCharge is an app or an online browser platform where you can earn free kilometers by shopping online, which you can then make use of through a connection, such as a charging card at the participating charging stations, such as Ionity, Allegro, Railpals, or EMBW, allowing you to recharge your vehicle for free again. That's how we managed to charge more than 50,000 kilometers basically for free. I could see that being interesting for some of you. That's the reason I've gone ahead and added a link into the video description below. Let's see where he stands. Yeah, we've been at it for 2 minutes now. The battery's at 14%, and it's sluggishly charging at 84 kilowatts instead of the reported peak value of up to 160 kilowatts, which is just suboptimal. Now at 21%, it gets a bit better, and it barely manages to reach about 105, 106 kilowatts. Maybe we'll hit 160 with you here. I would be happy about it, and also for the Peugeot E-5008 because it's actually a pretty cool car, which just kind of... The electric motor drivetrain battery concept isn't really at the forefront of the electric cars leading the way, but a lot of you are mentioning, you know what, Ollie, I don't really need it much because I charge the car at home all year long. And if I happen to take a longer trip, maybe 2 or 3 times a year, I just treat myself to a pleasant charging break. A good number of you have written to me saying that you take a lunch break, afternoon break, maybe even enjoy your dinner during this time. Power naps, taking walks with the dog, and for those folks, recharge time likely means a period of deep relaxation. Well, everyone is wired differently. I can somehow. actually manage without any pause for recharging. Maybe I've been involved in e-mobility for too long, so it's not exciting for me but rather burdensome. For me, the car can't charge fast enough, Stefan, right?
Ja, da bin
Ideally,
ich völlig bei dir. Ja.
just like at a gas station, a quick 5 minutes with pee, pay, and off we go. Such a quick stop would be simply ideal. And if I happen to be tired or hungry, we'd take a break for sure, to be completely honest. But then maybe just a quick 10-minute snack with a bun or a burger or something. And not wasting half an hour or 3/4 of an hour roaming around with an electric car and celebrating it.
Well, terrible.
The charging pause is also the right opportunity to show you the Peugeot E-5008 from the outside again. If you haven't seen the review with the factory, please take a look at the video I linked in the video description. I really like the design, especially in this blue, which gets a slightly turquoise tint in the sun. I find it to be a chic exterior color. Then, here are the beautiful lion claws embossed with the new Peugeot logo, and the discreet 5008 for 5008 is nicely embossed. Peugeot really knows how to create a nice visual appearance, I think. I must express that it's a genuinely beautiful car, and they've redefined the rims a bit differently, much like how Peugeot typically crafts cars in a pleasantly unique manner. I also find it quite stylish. It looks really cool from a distance when you take a closer look. Initially, they might appear somewhat tangled up, but it's notably the sideline that really stands out quite prominently. Stefan, look here, another Peugeot logo. It's got a little something. Yeah, little things, almost like with Ferrari,
Ja.
And then also the glossy black, contrasted here with the exterior color. I think that's stylish. And then this little silver stripe. Then we have a high roofline that this silver line breaks in a coupe-like style because it drops almost vertically here, setting it apart from the E-3008, which is about 25 centimeters shorter and has a coupe-like line, so in that regard, I think Peugeot offers a nice change. When you show the rear of the car again in a moment, Stefan, the backside, then maybe it could be a real treat for you, especially with the GT line with the LED taillights, where there is also a nice welcome light signature at the front and back. Everything is super, super stylish, even the diffuser at the bottom. The only thing is the rear wiper, which perhaps could have been slightly more cleverly integrated into the edge spoiler, as is quite often done nowadays. Yeah, well, I don't want to dwell on Shark Castle, nobody needs it anyway. And by the way, where you can 8008. Distinguish it from its combustion friends, the hybrid and plug-in hybrid is here on the French electric. Stefan says he caught a glimpse of the peak of the people out of the corner of his eye.
I distinctly saw and took careful note of the 143rd.
For a moment there, or what?
It possibly could have actually been 2 in the end.
We're at 33% now. It's progressing after 10 minutes. We've added almost 18 kilowatt hours and are charging at 125 kilowatts, which is a relief. Because when I read from some colleagues or people in the forums, they seem to somehow only manage to get around 70, 80 or 90 kilowatt charging speed. Yeah, sometimes you might just have to rely on experienced electric vehicle users if the battery doesn't have preconditioning. I'm not trying to praise myself here, but then of course you can generate a bit of heat into the battery by driving fast and by frequently engaging in recuperation, obviously. There are already some Ars Movendi where you don't just leisurely charge at 70, 80 kilowatts. And at the very least, we've successfully managed that here in the end, right?
Sure, yeah.
And so 120 kilowatts, you really can't say anything bad about it because there are quite a few colleagues who might not even manage 120 kilowatts. So from that perspective, Peugeot, you're actually doing a pretty good job so far, I think. 50% after 17 minutes. We've charged 30.7 kilowatt hours now. Yeah, he's just cruising around here again at 78 kilowatts. I really hope he gets his second wind very soon. Spring should really be coming soon. It feels like it's -4 degrees instead of +4 degrees here, and it's bitterly, bitterly cold, and I somehow feel like moving on now. I believe that approximately 18 minutes, that's definitely at the Taycan level. A Taycan likely costs about 3 times the Peugeot E-5008.
What exactly blew up with you here?
Well, people sort of had a lot of comments and criticism about my faux fur collar, you know what I mean? I mean, with this freezing wind and all, a hood can be really quite nice, wouldn't you agree?
I'm not really big on it like you mentioned before, but you do get used to it, right? It's quite nice.
I'm not fond of hoods, and I really can't stand that fur trim because it always seems to tickle a lot. You can't really remove it, you know?
Nee,
Yep, that's silly.
Yes, by the way, we've now reached the 80% mark. Yeah, it's continuing to charge at a leisurely pace of 47 kilowatts, 39 minutes have passed, and we've loaded almost 55 kilowatt hours. Yeah, so I'd say 10.80 or 11.80, he jumped straight to 11. 39 minutes is tough, right? Well, I mean, sure, winter, and maybe he'd be a bit faster in summer because then he might have hit 160 at best, perhaps. Maybe we could have shaved off like 3 or 4 minutes, but it's just not where others are in 2025 or where you want to be now with all the manufacturers. I mean, even VW has achieved it, and you really have to praise Volkswagen because today we're showing Peugeot, which with the ID series is constantly at like 26 to 28 minutes, or with the smaller batteries even 24 minutes.
Ja.
They've really gone full
Yeah,
throttle,
richtig.
and that's what I would wish for Stellantis as well, because there's a lot you can adjust with battery management and charging spikes. Take a close look at Peugeot, see if you can make some adjustments to optimize the time and kilowatt-hour efficiency a bit further. Because I believe the E-5008, especially when there are many families traveling, who then occasionally go to the Adriatic, Croatia, or Spain for a vacation in the summer, I think it's really nice if you then have multiple charging stops and maybe in total take half an hour or an hour, can save. I'm really curious to know what you guys think about this topic. Feel free to leave a comment down below if you're more with Team 40 minutes or Team 20 minutes. After our in-depth charging check story, let's promptly delve into the comprehensive conclusion regarding our opinions on the Peugeot E-5008. Yes, from the review and the test drive, we have gathered that we are driving an electric car which, I find, utilizes the space of 4.80 meters in length and 1.89 meters in width very well. Very eloquently exploits, especially against the backdrop. Since it's a mixed platform because the 5008 is also available as a multi-hybrid and plug-in hybrid, and that's Peugeot, I find it fascinating and well done to seamlessly integrate these three drive concepts on this versatile platform. Here and there, like for example on the center console, you might notice that it's not a purely designed electric car. But here in the first and second row, I think there's a lot of space. And if necessary, maybe for smaller boys and girls as well. Potentially in the back, the third row. We've observed a truly comfortable suspension system both in city areas and right here on the freeway. With great travel comfort, where Peugeot expertly incorporates its long-standing experience in car manufacturing, I find this is also very well applied in the 5008. The only thing I would have wished for is maybe a little more direct steering so you can feel a bit more agility, perhaps get a bit more driving performance, and maybe even a bit more power in the electric drives. In my opinion, rear-wheel drive might have been better than front-wheel drive, but that's probably due to the platform since a combustion engine has to be put in front sometimes. And so, perhaps you inevitably find yourself making a bit of a compromise in certain areas. Certainly, as you're aware, fuel consumption in SUVs is always quite ambitious due to several factors like the frontal area, the drag coefficient, and simply because of the sheer mass. Typically, you're dealing with about 2.2 tons of empty weight, and I found it at 100 to be quite very good with under 20 kilowatt hours. It was really top-notch, but anything around 120, 140, 160 kilometers per hour was already in exponential growth, like all other SUVs too. And to be fair, we must also say that we've already had a few Volvos and Polestar on the channel where I believe there was a 4 in front just from memory.
All fair.
And they were rather smaller than larger.
Yep, true.
From that view, you must really acknowledge that Peugeot clearly shows a healthy balance in this regard. It's also available with a larger battery pack providing 101 kilowatt hours gross and nearly 97 kilowatt hours net. I think that would be my version. It also has a bit more power in the drive. Well, 13 kilowatts won't really be noticeable.
No, almost definitely not.
Yes, and honestly, I would have very much wished that at the base level, we had the power of the all-wheel drive available, with its 240 kilowatts, 326 horsepower.
Yeah, it's got a bit more torque available, which helps it to gain some ground, because sometimes it can seem a bit sluggish and not as responsive as you might hope for in such situations.
And I think it would be cool if you could get the all-wheel drive with the big battery too. That might actually be a good option for me if I'm seriously considering a large SUV. We're genuinely keen to hear all your insights and opinions on this. Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments. Let's discuss there. Thoughts on the Peugeot E-5008? What are its strengths and weaknesses? And yes, feel free to write in the comments if it might potentially be your electric car choice in the future. It starts at a good 51,150 euros or from 479 euros on lease. Feel free to take a test drive at your trusted local Peugeot dealer and have a closer look at the Peugeot E-5008. There. And with that, we've come to the conclusion of today's video. I sincerely hope you really enjoyed it. You give it a thumbs up. Feel free to check if you're part of the Simple Electric community. You would make us really happy if you supported us with your subscription, which is free for you but gives you the opportunity to always be informed about the latest electric cars through us in the future. I sincerely thank you for watching. Stay healthy and see you soon. Your Ollie. Hey, Stefan, so can you explain to me what's really so difficult about integrating that rear window wiper into the rear edge spoiler already?
Yeah, it was essentially nothing at all from the start, but I ask you, for instance, why is it not possible to integrate that strange device into the bodywork itself?
Sure, that shark fin, it's really such a constant contentious issue. I believe it's something that will follow us in some manner until the very end of our lives. That's the feeling I have.
I fear so too.